What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? Welcome to the Thursday MLB DFS Lineup Card live show. That's a long title. I got to work on that. That's just too many words. Looks like we got a good crowd hanging out here for the tiny little three-gamer. 3 games. Play, everybody. Thank you very much. Good luck. Show's over. That's about it. That's really the up and down of the strategy for a slate like this. I think it's an interesting slate with only 3 games available because it does pay to get really different in baseball. It does pay to start focusing a little bit more ownership toward like the bottom of the lineups, towards some of the lesser pitchers. Like there's a couple guys who are getting a ton of ownership, and then there's a couple guys in the single digits, like looking at FanDuel ownership on a different site. And it just shouldn't play that way on such a short slate. Like there are 6 pitchers on the board today, and I think all 6 of them are in play. So it's a really interesting one to dig into. It's going to be kind of a short show. We can just hang out and chat for a little bit if you guys want, but figure we could start a little bit later. We've got the full write-up up on the site. We've got the home run picks, the power index, the stack tool. Everything's up to date. Didn't take very long to go through today, but we'll dig in. We'll go game by game. We'll look at the confirmed lineups as they drop, and we'll have a good time and hopefully make some good picks here. Matt Tomlinson says best info in the industry. Appreciate that, buddy. Throwbacks is in the chat. Throwbacks is a prop gambler. All right. Welcome, welcome. Love that. Matt Tomlinson, Po DJ and Stoner. We got Larry C there. We've got Dennis in the chat. Good group hanging out. I saw you guys were talking Silverchair in the chat a minute ago. That song's going to be stuck in my head the rest of the night now. Just the chorus of... what the hell is the name of that song? I don't even remember the name of it. I could sing all the words if it was playing right now, I'm sure, but I do not remember the name of it. At Rotor Scouts, you call Adam and congratulate him on 100K the other day. Did who? Adam Scherer took down 100K? Good for him. I'm happy for him. I would, if I knew how to get in touch with him, I would reach out and say congratulations. Maybe I will on Twitter. I didn't see it though. I wasn't aware of it, but good for him. That's awesome. So let's, tomorrow, what's everybody saying about tomorrow? Oh, that's the name of the song. I'm dumb. I'm like, why are you guys talking about tomorrow? I'm like, what did I miss? Yeah, tomorrow's the song. I got it. I'm caught up. So let's dig into this one, guys. This is Stephen Leibowitz says 3 games right here by 8 p.m. We could do, but we probably won't. I'm actually in both FanDuel contests today. They put up a second one after that first small one that they put up filled, so I jumped into that one too. Not sure if I'm going to keep those lineups or delete them, but I figured I'd grab the spots just in case. But yeah, going to try and build a lot of entries, cover a lot of ground on the short slate, which is kind of what I was referring to at the top of the show. Well, let's dive in. Let's see if we got the Nats. We do have the Nats. That's perfect. Got the Nats, and the White Sox lineup is out as well. So just missing the Cubbies and the Guardians now. So I think one of the spots on the slate that's going to be a really interesting spot for some differentiation is actually this Nationals lineup. I expect they're going to be fairly low owned because I think Senga is going to be super popular. Senga projects at the top of the pitching board for me, kind of by a decent little margin. And I think it makes total sense. This is a premium strikeout guy, 29.7% strikeouts, pitching really well overall this season with a 3.27 ERA, a 3.71 xFIP. He does have flaws, though. He's a really inefficient pitcher. He wastes way too many pitches on days where he doesn't have his premium stuff. He's going up against a team in the Nationals that's a low strikeout team overall anyway. 16.3% for this confirmed lineup strikeout rate this season. Granted, that's calculating with a 0 in there and probably still doing the division, so it's 18.3% when we're ignoring Luis Garcia. For some reason, today Garcia decided to come up with just zeros in the statistical board. I'm not sure if they changed to the other, did they give him an initial on Fangraphs or something? I'm not really sure. But at least he's coming up as a second baseman with the correct pricing, and I didn't have to change the pitcher, Luis Garcia. Yeah, as I was saying, Senga, a premium strikeout pitcher, but they're a low strikeout bunch, and what he does poorly is he walks way too many. 11.9% walk rate this season. So he's constantly getting himself into trouble. He's only thrown 99 innings in 18 starts, and when it goes bad, it can get bad in a hurry. So if they can capitalize on the walks, and they're not a very good team at drawing walks despite the low strikeout numbers, they're more hit the ball, put it in play types. But if they can do that while getting a couple guys on base via the free pass, they might be a business for a handful of runs. And on a slate like this, a handful of runs is probably all we're going to need. Like, we're lower odds to have two teams that completely run off and hide on today's slate. Now, granted, it doesn't project that way in Vegas. They're the lowest end team, the Nationals here, and that's why they're going to be lower owned than all of these other teams, I think. Senga popular. Senga's very talented. They've got the lowest implied total in Vegas, so it just creates a situation where they're probably going to be less popular. They're also a pretty bad baseball team. So I do think there's good opportunity to differentiate lineups by utilizing the Nats. And I'm going to be saying this a lot. We're using everything today. We are flat out using everything on the board as much as possible today. The Mets are a major, major piece of the puzzle. Biggest implied total by a half run in Vegas of 5.39. Next highest team is the Cards at 4.8. This is also the most lopsided game. Mets are by far the biggest favorites on the board. They're going up against Josiah Gray, who honestly hasn't been bad. A 3.45 ERA. The xFIP isn't great, 4.82 xFIP. That's revelatory about what kind of pitcher he really is. And he only has a 20% strikeout rate. He's got an ugly 10.4% walk rate. Like, you tolerate Senga's 11.9% walks because he strikes out nearly 30%. This is an intolerable walk rate when you're only striking out 20%. Puts too many guys on base. Not effective enough overall, but he's really wrangled his home run problems a lot this year. Down to just a 3.07% home run rate on 7.5% barrels, 34.9% hard hits. Last year was a 5.86 on 10.7% barrels, 36% hard hits. Year before, 6.19. We were just targeting this guy every day that first season. So he's grown on the mound. He's still got a ways to go before he's any kind of regular option for us. But he projects out okay. 27-point projection, that's fine. It's basically everybody, all five, the five guys you would expect, and then Miles Michaelis at the bottom, a couple points behind everybody. All the other options are playable to good. Senga's at the top of the board by a handful of points. Then it's everybody else together. Good boy, Joker. Go lie down. Got the dog bothering me. My allergies are killing me today. I think it's related to when I, not directly or entirely, but I think when I drink. And I had some beers last night with my buddies. My friend Lou came over and surprised me, and my buddy Charlie was here, who comes by like every week on Wednesdays. So we were having some beers and hanging out last night. And I think when I sleep via like drinking and then like, crashing after drinking, some people might call that passing out. I wasn't like wrecked. I just had a few beers. But like however I sleep, I think it, like, the way that I breathe just sets off my allergies and gets, like, I don't know, whatever it is, just in my face a lot more, because I'm not like this on a lot of days. But today, it's getting me. Let's see what's going on. Jake Swale says, Nats mini stack with Ruiz, Abrams, and Thomas with the Cards full stack. I like that. Looks like a clear path of shipping tonight's tourney. Looks like a good one to me. Larry says, 3-game slate, max 1 versus pitcher. Yeah, I don't love doing it. I would be more inclined to say, like, instead of stacking against a pitcher as a way to differentiate, maybe being a little bit more loose with the terms of the stack, saying like, all right, I'll take 3-3 and then two random one-offs instead of like a 4-4 or a 4-3-1, and just letting a little bit more differentiation of build come into it, a little bit more than putting a hitter versus pitcher. But I think it's viable on a 3-game slate. It's just not my preferred approach, but I do think it's viable there, Larry. And yeah, I would probably limit it to 1. On a 2-gamer, you can get loose and you can just allow whatever. But with 3 games, I think there's enough where you don't have to do that. Jake Swale says, Gray's also from the New York area, and he mowed down the Mets in his last start against them. All right. Not something we can quantify, not something we want to focus on or worry about. But hey, maybe he hates the Mets. Maybe he just hates the color orange. Who knows? Blue, orange. Maybe he hates apples. That big apple that comes out. He doesn't want to see that thing if the Mets hit a home run. So, yeah, you never know. All sorts of stuff can go into this, though. Let's see. So, yeah, I think we are going to some Nats bats, like I was saying. against saying I was talking about Josiah Gray. I lost my place there a little bit. So I think Gray's on the board. 6,600, 8,600. He's very cheap. He's easy to afford. Obviously, much cheaper on the DK slate. He's just a good dart throw for value over there. And that's the kind of thing we just need. You just at low ownership, he's probably going to be one of the least popular pitchers, if not the least popular pitcher on the slate, going up against the Mets with that run total with everybody in the world going to them. It makes sense to play him back the other way and hope to pick that off with all that value on the board, with the ability to buy big bats based on where that salary is. So on both sides, Gray's in play. Obviously, you need the good version of him, but we've seen the good version a few times this season. He's posted some good games, mixed in with some really bad games, but he's playable. We're definitely going to Mets, but they're going to be really, really popular. So this is where I'm talking about the need to embrace the bottom of lineups. This is where we can get into the DJ Stewarts of the world, although he might be a little popular. He had a home run and a decent game the other day for a very cheap price. But you can get to Kana, you can get to Brett Beatty, you get to Omar Narvaez, who's an interesting catcher option at the dead minimum now on DK. He's obviously not Francisco Alvarez at the plate, but he's a pretty decent bat for a catcher. He's got 1 home run in 54 plate appearances already. He hit 4 in 296 last year, 11 in 445 the year before. So he's got an okay bat as a catcher, and he costs the dead minimum on DK now. So I think you can differentiate with him. You can differentiate with these 3 guys. And just by virtue of working some of these guys in, making a different decision than a lot of the other people, you can get different with a lineup pretty quickly. Like, you don't want to always go to Dan Vogelbach just for that reason instead of Pete Alonso at first base on DK. But if you do that, if you build 30 Mets stacks and you do that in a handful of them while still buying back, the gap between Vogelbach and Alonso, it can create a differentiation of build for those lineups, gets you a much lower owned player at value, and just sets you aside from most of those other Met stacks. So I think it's important to work a lot of these guys in and just kind of build, especially the guys that are playing the same as a position as a premium player. Those guys are naturally going to be the lowest owned guys in this group. And Vogelbach does have power. 48.1% hard hit rate. It's only turned into 7 home runs in 215 plate appearances this year, but we know that he's got left-handed power. Last year, 18 homers in 461. The year before, 9 in 258. He's not the best bet. He's not Pete Alonso. That's why we don't play him over Pete Alonso every time. But for that value difference, for what the ownership difference should be, it makes sense to rotate him through at least some stacks of Mets. Nimmo off the top's a great leadoff hitter. He's still way too cheap. Lindor, as we've talked about a number of times, good for counting stats right now. Not producing in terms of the triple slash, but I don't really care that much because the counting stats are there. He's fairly reliable. 5,200, 3,700. I'm happy to pay that price at shortstop today. McNeil hitting third kind of sucks, but at least he's ahead of Alonso, so you can get some correlated scoring out of him if he manages to drop in a couple base hits. His BABIP is a career low. It's 277, I want to say. It's in the article. I looked it up today. That's the key with him. If the ball's dropping in, if he's getting lucky, if he's directing his base hits correctly, then he's a good hitter. And he's hitting over 300, and he's involved in the offense, and he's valuable. This year, 277 BABIP. That leads directly to his 88 WRC plus and his 249 batting average. It's no bones about it. That's all he does. So a flawed piece, but it is at least cheap. 3,700, 2,700 second base outfield. You get multi-position on him. An effective enough part. But really, it's these two and this guy, and then a lot of mixing and matching through these guys, and try to get to lower owned combinations with this team. Don't just focus on these 3 hitters, use it as a 3-man, and go about your day. Like, mix in some of these other guys. It's worth doing. They're in a great spot. It's the leading situation of the day. They are going to be the most popular team on deck, though, so everybody's going to have some ownership. On the Nats side, CJ Abrams has been rolling since he moved to the leadoff spot. Overall, 303 on base percentage and a 95 WRC plus, but in the leadoff role, 397 on base, 157 WRC plus. Absolutely a dynamite way to start off a national stack. 3,900, 3,200 at shortstop, still cheap. Good player, probably, or at least, developing into what I think will be a good player. 10 home runs, 20 stolen bases, 256, 303 is bad, but 425 is okay for, a cheap shortstop. So I like that spot. Obviously, he's not Francisco Lindor on the other side. So you're making a specific decision when you start a build with him at shortstop over some of the other options. But I think it's in play, and I think he's definitely a key piece in stacks of nationals. Layton Thomas has been their best player this season, 16 homers, 12 steals. creating runs 22% better than average. Him and Heimer Candelario, the only two Nats in this lineup over the league average in WRC+. Candelario sitting at 19% above. They both have 16 home runs. Candelario's cheap, 4,400, 3,300 at third base. Thomas, arguably fairly cheap for his production at the plate this year. He's slashing 293, 341, 486. The 16 homers and 12 steals, and still only 5,100 on DK. That's affordable. It's not exactly cheap, but it's affordable. 37's about right on FanDuel. Joey Meneses at first base. Better hit tool than a power hitter. 280, 323, 401, 95 WRC plus. Up to 7 home runs, a 40.9% hard hit rate. Not a great option at cleanup, but for a cheap first baseman, 3,800, 2,800, they're very affordable bats on the Nats side of things here too. You also have Dom Smith in that lineup at 2,700 at first base on DK. Not exactly the same situation with Vogelback and Alonso, where maybe Vogelback does go out and hit you a home run there. Dom Smith's a really flawed hitter this year. He's sitting 267, 336, 349, a .082 ISO, 5 homers, a 5.1% barrel rate, 28.8% hard hits. He could go out and hit a home run, no doubt about it. He could go out and get himself on base. What you like is just a 14.9% strikeout rate. And that's what these guys, again, are good at. Everybody down here is just in the teens for strikeouts. So that's what we're looking for. Just a guy who's going to put the ball in play, hopefully be in the right situation when he does, hopefully gets on base and continues a rally or whatever. But he's not a great option. He's on the team. He's in the lineup, so he's playable. But it's not a great option. And Corey Dickerson kind of falls into that bucket too. 3.8% barrels, and it's only 136 plate appearances, 2 home runs, but he's kind of on the back end for the career here at 2,300, 2,200 in the outfield. Playable part, everybody is, but low end. Luis Garcia in the infield, playable. Alex Call, not bad, 6 home runs, 9 stolen bases in 314, but only a 70 WRC plus. Not like high-end output in terms of the counting stats, but something. You know, it's better than the 2 home runs, 0 steals from Corey Dickerson. But not great options through the bottom. But that does make him worth playing. Kim Ruiz, I think I skipped over him. Hard-hitting catcher, never strikes out. Doesn't really walk a lot. That's, like I said before, that's what kind of sucks, is like with all the lack of strikeouts, there's not really anybody drawing a lot of walks in this lineup. Candelario leads at Call leads at 9.6%, but only gets on at a 296 clip. So they're going to need Senga to be the inefficient off-form Senga, where that splitter's dying a little early on him and he's throwing more balls than he wants to, and have them not chase out of the zone. That's where they might pick up some walk rate, is just in not chasing those pitches, if they're effectively doing that. So while I do like Senga as the top projected pitcher, I definitely want to have a pretty fair investment in the Nats today. I think it's just a contrarian enough spot on such a short slate that it makes sense. So everything's on the board. It's probably Mets bats, Senga, just because of the popularity, though. It's, I'm a little bit less interested in them than like the raw nature of the spot. And then Nationals bats, Josiah Gray as a ranking. But everything's in play. Everything will be in my lineups. 2 games to go. 4:48. Record time. Dom Smith was supposed to be so good. Heard about him for years and turned into a dud, says Larry. Yeah, all Mets fans? Yep, definitely. He was going to be the next big thing for them for a while. Stephen Leawood says, Vogelback looks like he swallowed John Kruk whole. That boy got large. That's why I was saying in the Discord, I didn't really, somebody was asking about a potential cycle pick, and Vogelback was on the list, and that's why I was saying I can't really see him legging out the triple. It would be a fun highlight. Definitely would take a couple drop balls in the outfield, I think. Matthew, better just mini stacks today. Probably try a few 5-man just to see. Yeah, I think everything is worth spreading out to the full version of the lineup. And honestly, if you're looking for the full differentiation from it, I think it is the 5-man version, the full version of it, rather than just going with the minis. Like, that'll be a more popular play, just using 3 of them, because they're cheap, they're easy to get to, they're easy to build with, and like the 3 good players on the team would be those 3 guys in a lot of lineups. So I think if you are embracing some of the shitty players on the team and just putting them in with the rising tide notion and all of those things in play, and only 6 teams to choose from, I think the full stack is actually the way to go to get that, to achieve that differentiation. That reminds me of that Harden injury report a couple years ago. Fat and strippers. That sounds like Harden. See where he. They haven't traded him yet, right? I haven't been really following the. I've been paying loose attention to the NBA offseason just so I know where everybody lands. But if they traded him, it didn't hit my radar. I know he wants out. All right, Cubby's lineup is here. So this is another one. I expect that Miles Mikolas will be the lowest owned pitcher, deservedly so, on this slate. But he projects at a playable number. 21 fantasy points on FanDuel is not good. As you can see, it's 10 points behind where Justin Steele is. But he only costs 6,800, 7,800. He's got single-digit ownership projections on some sites for FanDuel use. I imagine also one of the lower-owned value guys for a DK SP2. And he's not a premium pitcher by any means, but he's a good enough, effective enough major league pitcher to get through the Cubs in a home start. It's really, really hitting-oriented conditions in St. Louis today, though. It's like 100 degrees after sunset tonight. The wind's blowing out. It's kind of a minor wind blowing out, so I'm not really as concerned about the wind. But it's just one of those hot, humid, like St. Louis kind of days. So I don't actually love the pitching on either side in this one because of that. I would probably drop these guys down behind the other options, but I do think it makes some sense to grab some shares of Miles Mikolas. If we're looking at him this year, 4.33 ERA, 4.67 xFIP. Those are both up from last year. He was better last year overall. 3.29 ERA, a 3.80 xFIP. Only walked 4.8%, only walking 4.6% this year. But he lost about 3 and change points off the strikeout rate. 19% last year was a little bit more effective than 15.8% this year. That's a big difference in terms of like his fantasy output overall, but on an any given slate sense and in a game by game kind of a sense, there's definitely potential for him to grab a couple more strikeouts than one might expect. So I do think he's in play. I definitely think he's in play for 5-6 clean innings against the Cubs. They're a very good team in terms of getting on base, creating runs. They have some really good power bats in this lineup, but he's good enough to get through this team. So I will have some shares of Miles Mikolas, but he'll probably be my lowest owned pitcher. I think I do just want to get ahead of the field on him, though, because it's easy to. Justin Steele on the other side, 8,600, 10,000 on the FanDuel slate. Obviously, really different pricing. You got to love him at the DK price. Even against the Cards lineup that I do have a healthy respect for, like I've said a bunch of times on this show and in the article, they're a lineup that's filled with much more talent than their results would suggest. Like that's a good baseball team. That's a good lineup. Nobody can convince me otherwise. They just don't tend to win a lot of ball games this year for whatever reason. But there's a lot of good players in that lineup. So Steele's not really in a safe situation, but he's a very good pitcher. 2.95 ERA, a 3.68 xFIP. Obviously, the xFIP's a little bit higher than that ERA, but not tragically so, and not like in a, oh, wow, he's actually a bad pitcher kind of a sense. 3.68 xFIP is very, very good. 1.42 home run rate is excellent. 6% barrels, only 33% hard hits, and 86 miles an hour of exit velo. And that's sustained over time, the last 2 seasons. 3.9% barrels last year, 33.3% hard hits, and 1.56% home runs. More home runs in 57 innings, 9 starts 2 years ago, but it was still only on 35% hard hits, 5.7% barrels. So this to me is just a small sample, little wonky small sample in only 9 starts. I suspect that the home run rate would have normalized in more starts. So just really good at keeping the ball in the yard, not allowing premium contact, not allowing guys to square him up, which is the same thing. So I like Justin Steele here. I think he's playable, but as I said, I think I'll probably go just a little bit less on this game in terms of the pitchers because I do want to roster both sides at the plate. I do want to go 1 through 9 on both of these teams in a number of different lineups and different builds because the hitting conditions are pretty ripe in St. Louis today. So it's yes to all 4 sides, obviously, but I think I prefer the bats in this situation. Cubbies lineup, Mike Tauchman in the leadoff role, quad A player. Doesn't really belong in the major leagues in a full-time role, but he's leading off basically every day. He's getting way too much popularity in that spot for it, but it's justifiable just because he's in a good correlated scoring spot with guys like Ian Happ, Cody Bellinger, Seiya Suzuki, Dansby Swanson. The whole lineup gets on base. The whole lineup creates runs pretty well. We've looked at their on-base percentage average in recent days, and you guys can see it right here in this column. There's just a ton of guys who are very, very good at drawing walks. That's this column over here. See all these double-digit walk rates in comparison to what we were seeing with the Nats? that's a much better lineup in terms of their ability to get on. They strike out a little bit more, not in a tragic sense, but some of these guys are pushing like 32% for Chris Morel is quite a lot. Say Suzuki 25% could be better, but they do draw walks. So it's just a more effective lineup overall. The power lies in like Cody Bellinger. Seiya Suzuki should hit for more power. He's only got 8 home runs this season, a 136 ISO, but a 49.1% hard hit rate. So he should hit for a little bit more pop, a little bit more power. He's got Swanson in the lineup now, again, protecting him. Swanson's having a little bit of a down season with only 12 home runs. He's been a multi-time 20-plus home run hitter as a shortstop, but he's very cheap for his talent. 4,500, 3,300 is just way too cheap for Dansby Swanson, particularly the DK price. FanDuel's only cheap by like, $200-300. DK is off by like 1,000. So there's good savings on Swanson. Chris Morel with his power upside, 272, 333, 539 at the plate also. Not a bad season from him in 241 plate appearances. Triple position eligible on FanDuel is a great buy, 3,800, 5,400 on DK, second base only. There's a lot of good options at second base today, but he's one of the stronger marks for power at the position. 10.79 probably leads second baseman for power. Yeah. Right, so positionally, this is FanDuel positioning, so if somebody else has multi-position on DK to second base, maybe we'll spot it later. But based on the guys with second base on FanDuel, we're talking about by far the guy with the highest home run upside in Chris Morel. Want to look at some other spots? Shortstop, kind of a mixed bag. That's why I don't mind CJ when the other shortstops on deck are Arias, underperforming Timmy Anderson, who I definitely am going to have a lot of today at a pretty cheap price. Dansby, DeYoung, both of these guys are better power hitters than CJ, but if I'm going to net stacks, I have no issues starting my lineups off with CJ Abrams. Do one more. An interesting DK position. Alvarez obviously not on the board. I forgot to do that. We're going to have to go back. Forgot to put everybody back into the list. Here, wait. Let me do this correctly. That 22 is Pete Alonso, by the way. So this is the full board. Obviously, we're seeing tons of power for the New York Mets against Josiah Gray. A lot of power in Chicago as well. All right, so let's go back to that second base board real quick. All right, so Gorman's in there. If Gorman's in the lineup, which, was he? Gorman is in the lineup. So Gorman's another power bat at second base, but he still falls short of where Morel was. Shortstop, Lindor at the top of the board, obviously. So that was the name that was missing at shortstop. So Lindor's the star, but he's going to be the most popular shortstop option. He's obviously the guy with the most power at the position today. But again, what I was saying about Abrams still applies in my mind there. And then catcher, Alvarez, like I said, not playing. So Kiebert, the top-ranked power hitter at catcher. But John Gomes is also an interesting one. He's in the lineup for the Cubbies here. Did Amaya not make it into the lineup? Yeah. Yeah, so you got John Gomes, 8 home runs this year, 240 plate appearances, a 160 ISO. Not a crazy mark in terms of just the raw trying to get to 10 in the home run model type of a number. But relative to all the other catchers on the slate, that's a pretty good power mark. So I think it makes sense to go to just basically whatever your primary stack is, make sure to be building in that catcher on DK. And I think I want to use some of these catchers on the FanDuel slate just because they tend to fall by the wayside, especially an 8-hitting catcher. A guy like Gomes, he's not going to be super popular on FanDuel for 2,600. So that's just an easy buy. So on a day like today, I like making those easy buys from late in the lineup that are going to be good pieces to differentiate lineups. Bellinger, obviously a major focus in that Cub stack. 5,600, 4,200, totally worth it. 312, 360, 545, 233 ISO, 140 WRC plus. Just waiting to get that trade call. Ian Happ, with all his on-base skills, definitely a big piece for correlated scoring. Can hit home runs, just hasn't really been this year, but a decent power bat. On the other side, on the card side, going up against Steele, limited opportunity for power. So that probably knocks the Cards down a little bit further than where I would normally have them. Might be more interested in the Cubbies. Actually, yeah, definitely more interested in the Cubbies going up against Michaelis than the Cards against Steele. But I feel like the public will probably feel that way as well. So I definitely want to include some Cards. I really like this lineup, as everybody knows. Brendan Donovan in the top spot, despite the lefty-lefty. What's he doing against lefties this year? Donovan against lefties this season is we'll get there. Here we go. 250, 350, 250 with a 0 ISO and an 80 WRC plus. So there's no power there whatsoever. Against righties, that's 295, 375, 466 with a 170 ISO, 133 WRC plus. He's got, so that's 60 plate appearances against lefties. 13 singles, 0 triples, 0 doubles, 0 home runs, 1 RBI. Not great as a leadoff man, but we're really just looking for the base hits, so the singles would be fine. Put him on base ahead of Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, Wilson Contreras, Tyler O'Neill, Jordan Walker. All these guys have good righty pop going down the lineup here, so all of these guys are very much in play. Decently high priority bats in terms of when I'm stacking these cards. I want to have a pretty good cross section of especially Goldie and Arenado, obviously, but also O'Neill, Walker, less so Contreras, but on DK he's pretty important at 4,000 as a catcher bat. That makes a lot of sense. Clean up hitting catcher over there for 4,000. You definitely want to be in business with that guy, especially in card stacks. But I think he's an okay one-off for stacks as well, or for DK lineups as well. And then Walker just having a really good season. Still is cheap, 3,000, 2,800, 275, 337, 441, creating runs 16% better than average, 9 home runs, 4 stolen bases. He's been really good in his opportunities. 49.1% hard hit rate. He's cheap. Hopefully he slips by the public a little bit, gets a little bit less popular than he ought to be. Gorman, major power upside at second base, like we just saw, 4,900, 3,400. Against lefties this year, I suspect the numbers are not going to be pretty. Gorman against left-handed pitching this season is... Oh, actually, he's fine. I did not realize that Gorman was raking against lefties this year. Did he do that last year, too? All 14 of his homers last year? Yeah, no, he was not good against lefties this year. Last year. This must be small sample. How many plate appearances was this? 46 plate appearances, that's why. All right. That explains it. That surprised me for a minute there. He does have 3 home runs in the split in 46 plate appearances. That's pretty good. 282, 375, 90 with a 308 ISO. The 308 ISO is what made my eyes pop. I was like, there's no way most of his home runs and doubles and stuff have come against lefties. But that's a pretty good triple slash and a very, very small sample. 157 WRC plus. Yeah, especially if people are thinking of it as and not looking it up the way I just was. I was getting ready to say, like, maybe Gorman's not skippable, but not a priority. But if he's going to produce against the lefty, I'm happy to get there now. I hope that he goes by the wayside a little bit for the public. Second base and third base on FanDuel for 3,400. Second base only 4,900 on DK. It's where you want him anyway with Arenado in the lineup. So it's a decision point between him and Brendan Donovan, both lefties going up against the lefty at second base, which is kind of interesting. Might lead some of the public to use Taylor Motter in that spot at 2,100 down at the bottom of the lineup. Just thinking like, oh, he's a righty and I'll play him against the lefty and he's cheap and yada yada, but he's pretty weak. He does have multiple seasons in the minors with more than with double-digit home runs, but he's in his 30s. He's never really stuck at the major league level. Like, there's no real reason to expect very much from Taylor Motter. He is on the board for differentiation for a cheap price and on a day where we're playing everybody 1 through 9 in all of these lineups. Definitely on the board, but he's a very low priority, and I would much rather have either of those guys, either Donovan or Gorman at second base. Carlson's a playable part switch hitter, 2,300, 2,600, 5 homers, 3 steals this year in 224 plate appearances, 8 and 5 and 488 last year, created runs exactly at league average. Not a great bat, did hit 18 home runs 2 years ago in 619 plate appearances. If that guy shows up today, then you're doing all right. But not a great bat, but a cheap option in the outfield. So again, it's 1 through 9 in both lineups, with obvious priorities up and down on both sides. So if I'm ranking it, it's probably Cards bats. Cubs bats, Cards bats, Justin Steele, Miles Michaelis. Last game of the day. 5:04. Plenty of time to build lineups for the short slate. Obi, where you going, man? Obi-Wan saying goodbye already? Bo Naylor hitting for the cycle pick. That's another aggressive one. Home run, maybe. That I could see. I don't know about the cycle. Maybe his brother. Brother might be a better cycle pick. Josh. Brother Josh, 302, 341, 499, 196 ISO, 125 WRC plus, 15 homers. Nice season for Josh. Bo's got 4 homers in just 77 plate appearances. Good power bat. Cheap catcher. Another guy down the lineup, potentially sneaky. I like the spot. I definitely want to get to some Guardians here. Going to be going to shares of everything. This pitching matchup is probably like the top both-sided one where both guys look pretty good. Dylan Cease, the ace of this White Sox staff now after they traded Lucas Giolito in a surprise last night out to the Angels. Angels just pushing their chips in and going for it, not trading Ohtani. I kind of like it. So we'll start with Cease. 8,000, very, very cheap on DK for his talent. 9,400 appropriately priced on FanDuel. Definitely want to get invested. 28% strikeout rate, one of the better marks on the board today. Going up against a low strikeout team in the Guardians. It's the one flaw in the matchup, and they've been playing a little bit better lately. There's a couple guys who are kind of coming on. They traded Ahmed Rosario to the Dodgers yesterday, so they're going to probably have Andres Jimenez hitting second, which I like. Let's see if this dropped. It did. There it is. They do have Andres Jimenez hitting second, which I like. I think it's the exact same lineup. So definite reasons to go to Dylan Cease and rely on the strikeout rate. But this 28% is down a couple points year over year, and from 30.4% last year, 31.9% year before. And what I'm concerned with about Cease, what's been his problem this year, is not a crazy, terrible problem, because he does still have a 4.04 ERA, a 3.95 xFIP. He's been fine. But he's giving up way more hard hits this year, 44.9%. That's up from 31.2% last year, 38.5% the year before. It results in 91 miles an hour of exit velo, up from just 2 miles an hour of exit velo would be amazing. Up from 86.8 last year and 89.2 the year before. So that's a big jump in premium contact. Barrels are way up. So it's a little bit of reason to be concerned about Cease. The walk rate's always high, 9.6 this year, 10.4 last year. If he's giving up the walks, the free passes, and a little bit of premium contact, that's where I start to worry around, like, all right, Kwan's done his job and gotten on base. Jimenez did whatever he did, but now we're dealing with the power bats with Jose Ramirez, Josh Naylor, Josh Bell. So, maybe some flaws around Cease. Maybe we can nitpick our way to seeing some Guardian success. The Guardians are on the board because it's a 3-game slate, and they're one of the 6 teams playing. Everybody knows I don't love this team for DFS production, but they've been significantly better in recent weeks, and they're starting to produce like they're supposed to. So I do think we're going to Kwan, we're going to Andres Jimenez. Obviously, Josh and Jose in the middle of the lineup are priority bats on this team. 292, 362, 501 for Ramirez, 16 homers, 13 steals, 209 ISO, 131 WRC plus. One of the more likely candidates to provide that star level performance, 2 home runs or like a 5-for-5 type day, whatever the case may be, hit for the cycle, whatever we're looking for. Just one of the more likely contributors on this slate overall. He's probably the biggest star on this slate. Am I right about that? Nobody bigger in this game? Well, Goldie and Arenado maybe. They do different things though. They don't fill all 5 categories quite as well. Lindor, arguably, Alonso. Yeah, I'm gonna go with it. I'm gonna say Jose Ramirez, biggest star on this slate. Not that it matters being the biggest star or not. Miles Straw could deliver the most important performance of the day. Very unlikely to. He's a slap hitter. All he does is really play defense and steal bases. 12 stolen bases on the season. 240, 309, 303, creating runs 27% worse than average. But even Miles Straw is in play on this slate, unfortunately. You're just looking for him to get on base, provide some correlated scoring with the top of the lineup there. Bell's been really disappointing this year, but maybe coming on a little bit. 11 home runs on the season now, up to a 103 WRC plus. Decent not great, but decent contact profile. 9.9% barrels, 42.3% hard hits. Need a little more from him, but he's still very cheap at first base. Still sucks you got to decide between him and Naylor on DK, but that's another one of those differentiation spots where, all right, if I just make the decision to go to Josh Bell for cheaper, not everybody's going to be doing that in their stacks. Or more people are going to be going to Josh Naylor. Or maybe it works the other way around. Like, check the ownership numbers, obviously. And just make that lesser used decision a couple more times. The road less trod and all that. Will Brennan, Gabe Arias, Bo Naylor, Miles Straw, bottom of the lineup. Kind of weak bottom end. It's probably the weaker, one of the weaker bottom ends on this slate out of all these teams. It's probably them and the Nats are the two weakest bottom ends. Would you rather have Dom Smith, Corey Dickerson, Luis Garcia, and Alex Call, or Will Brennan, Gabe Arias, Bo Naylor, and Miles Straw? I think I'd still rather have the Guardians bottom end, but it's close. Not great options. Arias is a kid that they're expecting to hit for power. He's got 4 home runs on the season, in 166 plate appearances, only a 118 ISO, 71 WRC plus, but a decently well-regarded power bat. He just isn't good at making contact with the ball. But when he does make contact, they expect him to hit a little bit. Naylor, we just talked about, cheap catcher with power. So that's good, not great. Tanner Bybee, 7,200 on DK. Again, another guy just very, very cheap. DK's just like a play whoever you want on the mound today. They just made everybody easy to reach. 72 on DK, 96 on FanDuel. I'm hoping the FanDuel price maybe cuts his ownership a little bit more than it should. I really like the spot. He projects, I think, second on the board for me. But it's that like tight group of 5 guys. 24.6% strikeout rate for the rookie, only a 2.02% home run rate, 5.7% barrels, 3.04 ERA is very good. The 4.3 xFIP is more accurate. This is more, who he really is. 8.4% walks is a little higher than you'd want. But overall, over his first 15 starts of his career, he's been very, very good. So I like the spot for Bybee. I don't mind the price. Going up against the White Sox team that's kind of underperformed this season. Grab their lineup. They've underperformed the season to the point that they are hanging up the white flag. In that trade that they made, sending Giolito and Ronaldo Lopez out, basically is telling this team, like, hey, we're not going to contend this year. We'll see what else gets shipped out of some of these parts. But right now, it's basically the everyday version of the lineup. It's funny because they just got fully healthy finally for the first time all season, and they just raised the white flag right afterward, which kind of sucks. It would be fun to watch this team in full form, but they didn't get there. Benintendi, Timmy, flawed up at the top. 2.6% barrels for Benintendi. Anderson, 2.8% this year. 2 home runs combined. Benintendi's got both of them. 12 stolen bases for him. 10 stolen bases for Anderson. Just disappointing seasons for those two players in an extreme sense. Benintendi's been the better of the two, but Anderson plays the more premium position, the more valuable spot, and he's the player that I think is the better of the two players. He's performed at a higher level than Benintendi throughout their careers. Home runs, stolen bases, 300-plus average, really good overall production. So I'm going to go to Tim Anderson in my White Sox stacks. I'll probably have some of him as a one-off at 2,600 on the FanDuel slate at shortstop. He's just cheap, and he's been terrible. But been terrible in this season in 340 plate appearances when he's been hurt and who knows what's going on versus a whole career of being very, very good. I'm going to still side with the career, especially when he comes so cheap. It's not like they're charging full freight for him anymore. So I'm happy to go with Tim Anderson. Luis Robert's been a star all season. 269, 323, 557 at 288 ISO, creating runs 36% better than average, 14.6% barrels, 28 home runs. Eloy Jimenez is right there with him in terms of his power bat. He's slashing 286, 330, 485 in 285 plate appearances, 13 home runs. When he's fully healthy, he's got every bit the power bat that his teammate does. 52% hard hits for Jimenez this year. 4,200, 3,200, very cheap. Joan Moncada back in the lineup. Decent bat. The stats are weird over time, but it is a bat that I believe in. Oddly, given this year kind of underperformed his 155 opportunities at 228, 271, 359. Last year was bad, 212, 273, 353 with a 76 WRC plus, only 12 homers in 433. Year before, 14 homers, decent season, 122 WRC plus in 616. So, I mean, there's a capable hitter there. It's just he's in and out of the lineup so much. He's very, very inconsistent. But 3,700, 2,300, especially on FanDuel, that's very cheap. So he's just easy to build with. Just Money Grandal, Jake Berger, Oscar Colas. This is a bottom of the lineup that I kind of like. Berger's got the immense power, but is a flawed overall quad A type of a talent. 32% strikeout rate, but does have 22 home runs and 307 plate appearances this season. That's hard to ignore on a short slate. Does have a 10.56 in the home run model. Grandal can get on base, cheap catcher option that won't be all that popular. Colas, cheap rookie, decent power potential. Hasn't realized it yet in the show, but definitely decent power potential. And Sebi Zavala, second catcher. That's another point of differentiation. Kind of a low-end one. 154, 200, 295. Does have 6 home runs and 162 plate appearances. Does have the idea of power at the plate. So maybe you mix him in a handful of times. It's just another spot where you can say, all right, everybody will go to Grandal, I'll go to Zavala. Or you want to get really weird on DK, since there's no first baseman, there's no Andrew Vaughn in the lineup. You could put Grandal at first and still use Zavala at catcher. That would be a strange contrarian build on DK that could be effective. That's about it, guys. So this one is, I'm going to say Bibee, Cease, Bibee, Cease, Guardians, White Sox. Yeah. Bibee, Cease, Guardians, White Sox. I think that's it. Let's slide over. Take a look here. I'll pop into the chat. Make sure there's no questions. Billy Hamilton is awesome. Mama can pay it off well. Like last night, Texas was one of the lowest owned teams, and it blew up. Strategy on a 3-game. Depends on how much your money means to you on a day-to-day basis, but contrarian or all in on the best players or two of the better options. Yeah, I agree with that, Chuck. It's a slate where, kind of like what I was saying yesterday with the short 5-gamer, that afforded us the opportunity to just you can take up positions. It's easier to do with a 5-gamer because that'll leave a few things just even more naturally low-owned. Where today, even the low-owned stuff today is going to be a little bit more popular than it should be, or is going to have a few people on it. But I do think it's either, get contrarian and mix it in with the chalky stuff, or just take a huge position on one of the top plays and just dominate that spot. So if you're looking to do that, say you're in love with Kodai Senga today and you just want to pay full price for your pitcher, and you just say, all right, across 75% of my lineups, I'm going with Senga on FanDuel. Where he's owned probably 35-40%. So you're still going to try and double up the field and just take it as if it's like a dominant basketball position almost, DFS wise. That's not my preferred approach. I prefer the spread out, get different, get weird, change up your builds a little bit type of approach and try and win it while still maintaining a big blanket across the possible outcomes on the slate. But I do think that either of those is viable. Yeah, I'm with you, Poe Degen Stoner. Getting contrarian AF on this slate. That's my Bibee, says Chuck Deuces. People were afraid of hitters versus Valdez. What, Framber Valdez? I was. Framber Valdez is really good. I don't know if that's the Valdez you're talking about. He was not really good the other day, but he is really good. Anyway, pitching board. Like I was saying, we've got Senga all the way up at the top, but I kind of consider him similar to these guys, and I definitely want to roster the Nationals on the other side as the most contrarian, probably, spot on the board today. And I think that if you get that inefficient, bad version of Senga, you're in danger of a 5-inning start. You're in danger of losing the opportunity at the quality start bonus on FanDuel. He could go out and have a dominant day. He could have a great day. But the Nats have enough low strikeout guys that they could frustrate him out there. Could be an ugly day for him if he walks a few too many. I do think there's some opportunity there. So that's a both-sided situation. These are all both-sided situations. Spoiler alert. Bibee, Steele, Josiah Gray, Dylan Cease. All very playable pitchers. No, Mamba, I think would Cease be my SP2? I think maybe Bibee, given the little bit of a projection difference there. Similar-ish talent, 7,200. I just like the price on Bibee there. But I don't think you're making a mistake with anybody. I really think all these pitchers are, or at least the top 5 of these guys, are all essentially the same. I would probably, if I had to rank it that way, I would probably go Senga, Bibee. What did I say before? Steele, Cease, or Cease, Steele? Whichever way I put that before. I forget. I would probably take it. Senga, Bybee, Cease, just because the Cards are a better lineup and there's those really good hitting conditions in St. Louis. So I'd probably slide Cease up a little bit if I was ranking it just personally. Steele would take the next spot. Gray would be below him, and then Michaelis. Like in my shares, that's probably how it'll rank out, with a lot of weight toward everybody but Senga in terms of relative to the field. Like I'm gonna just try and push more shares on each of these guys. I'll leave half the Senga shares. Like if Senga's 40% on FanDuel, I'm happy with 20. I'm perfectly fine with 20. Dedicate a big chunk of those other lineups that I'm leaving him out of to Washington stacks, and then just roll through getting over the field on everybody else. But yeah, all of Bybee, Steele, and Cease are essentially the same. Gray, if you get him on a good day, the league average-ish version of Gray could be on that list, but he'd be the next down above Michaelis. And then Michaelis bringing up the bottom. He's at least cheap. We're looking for clean innings. We're not going to get a bunch of strikeouts out of him, but a handful of strikeouts, 6 clean innings is not totally out of the question. Very bad conditions, but yep, Frommer took the loss versus Lowell in Texas bats. Yep, he took a beating from them too, didn't he? Didn't they get to him pretty big? My goldfish memory is that's gone already. But yeah, I think that's it, gang. It's gonna be a weird one. Embrace the variance, embrace the difference, embrace some of the bad lineups, the low-end options from the bottom of the lineups. Handful of points in any given position could be the difference in, you book that second baseman out of the cheap second baseman that gets you, a handful that hits a double and drives in a run and nobody else does anything. That could be Slate winning. So, I mean, it's just about making a couple different decisions and embracing some weirdness tonight. With that in mind, I'm going to go build some lineups, guys. Hit the thumbs up. Hit the subscribe if you're not already. Site's rotoscouts. Discord is free. I updated the Discord link, by the way. Pojigen Soner says embrace the suck. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You got to play the sucky players tonight, and it's going to be a fun one. It's going to be weird. Enjoy it, gang. I'm out of here. Good luck tonight. Somebody go win something.